Hello, graceful Libra. Some seasons arrive with loud announcements, while others reshape your life so quietly that you only recognize the change once you stop long enough to notice it. If you felt that the questions within you have become deeper over recent months, July 12, 2026 may mark a meaningful point of reflection. Rather than promising sudden miracles, this period invites you to see how the pieces of your journey have been slowly finding their place. The sky at this time seems to emphasize understanding more than certainty. Jupiter, a symbol of growth, perspective, and expanding awareness, encourages new ways of thinking as it moves through Gemini, a sign closely connected with learning, communication, and meaningful conversations. For Libra, another air sign guided by Venus, this can create an atmosphere where ideas flow more freely and insights begin connecting in ways that previously felt scattered. Venus itself reminds you that harmony is about more than relationships. It also speaks to your values, your sense of self-worth, and the quiet confidence that comes from living in alignment with what truly matters. Perhaps this is why the months leading here have felt both challenging and necessary. The unexpected pauses, changing plans, and moments when progress seems slow may not have been obstacles after all. They may have been opportunities to refine your direction, helping you become someone better prepared for what comes next, rather than simply arriving there sooner. Sometimes growth happens beneath the surface, much like roots growing deeper before new leaves appear. You may already recognize subtle signs that something within you has shifted. A forgotten goal could begin calling for your attention again, not because you're returning to the past, but because you've become the version of yourself capable of approaching it differently. A conversation, an unexpected message, or the return of someone connected to an unfinished chapter may offer fresh understanding rather than reopening old wounds. What matters most is not the event itself, but the perspective you bring to it. Instead of asking whether destiny has chosen you, this season encourages a quieter question. Are you ready to recognize how much you've already changed? The answers you're looking for may not arrive all at once, yet they can emerge through ordinary moments that suddenly carry extraordinary meaning. Reflection becomes just as valuable as action, and patience begins to feel less like waiting and more like preparation. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to comment 12 below as a simple reminder that you're choosing clarity over confusion during this season. Let it represent your willingness to move forward with greater balance, trusting that every experience has contributed something valuable to the person you're becoming. As we continue, consider this question: what part of your life has been quietly evolving beneath the surface, waiting for you to finally see it with new eyes? For Libra, this period carries a particularly thoughtful quality because it speaks to the natural rhythm of your element. As an air sign, you often discover your greatest transformations through perspective rather than force. And around July 12, 2026, the skies seem to encourage exactly that. Jupiter's movement through Gemini highlights communication, learning, and new ways of understanding your experiences, creating a supportive dialogue between your curiosity and your deeper sense of purpose. Instead of simply expanding opportunities around you, this influence may widen your ability to recognize possibilities that were already quietly taking shape. Another important layer unfolds through Venus, your ruling planet. Venus is often associated with love, but for Libra, it also represents personal values, self-respect, creativity, and the way you create harmony in your life. As Venus forms a meaningful relationship with Pluto, the symbolism points less toward external change and more toward honest inner transformation. Pluto has a way of revealing what has been hidden beneath the surface, inviting you to examine not only your dreams, but also the fears that may have kept those dreams waiting in silence. This can become a deeply revealing season. You may notice the places where you've chosen comfort over authenticity, softened your opinions to preserve peace, or quietly placed your own aspirations behind the expectations of others. Libra often carries a remarkable gift for creating balance, yet that gift sometimes comes with the temptation to keep everyone else comfortable before listening to your own truth. This astrological pattern gently asks whether you're ready to create harmony without sacrificing your own voice. Rather than encouraging dramatic reinvention, these symbols suggest a gradual return to yourself. The confidence growing now is quieter than ambition, yet often more enduring because it comes from experience rather than impulse. Every difficult conversation, every unexpected delay, and every season that challenged your certainty may have been strengthening your judgment in ways that only become visible with time. Looking back, you may begin to see that the path was shaping you just as much as it was leading you somewhere. What makes this period meaningful is not the promise of extraordinary events, but the possibility that ordinary moments begin carrying extraordinary clarity. Think of an orchestra preparing before the music reaches its fullest expression. Every pause, every gentle note, and every silence contributes to the beauty of what follows. In much the same way, the experiences you've gathered over recent months may now begin to reveal a pattern that was difficult to recognize while you were living through it. I've often found that genuine personal growth rarely arrives through dramatic revelations alone. More often, it appears through a conversation that lingers in your mind, a memory that suddenly takes on new meaning, or an unexpected encounter that helps you understand yourself from a different perspective. These moments are easy to overlook because they don't demand attention, yet they often become the turning points we only recognize later. As Jupiter encourages broader understanding and Venus invites deeper honesty, your inner compass may feel stronger than usual. You don't need every answer before taking your next step, nor do you need to force certainty where it hasn't fully arrived. What matters now is your willingness to pause, observe, and trust the quiet wisdom that has been developing within you all along. Sometimes the most important realization is not discovering something entirely new, but finally recognizing what your heart has been trying to tell you for years. Take a little time to notice what thoughts continue returning, what conversations seem unusually meaningful, and what dreams no longer feel like distant possibilities, but genuine directions worth exploring. Ask yourself which truth you're ready to acknowledge, which expectation no longer fits the person you've become, and which part of yourself deserves to be expressed more openly. Those reflections may become the foundation for a different way of moving through life, one built not on urgency, but on clarity, balance, and self-trust. Not every meaningful insight arrives with dramatic announcements. Some enter quietly, like the first light of morning spreading across a familiar landscape, or a familiar name appearing again, just when you've begun seeing your own story differently. That gentle atmosphere is reflected in the tarot surrounding this period, inviting you to listen carefully to the quiet changes already unfolding within you. Libra, when these three tarot cards appear together, the Star, Judgment, and the Ace of Swords, they often describe a journey rather than a prediction. Each one reflects a different stage of personal growth, and together they suggest that you may be standing between the person you once needed to be and the person you're gradually becoming. Their message isn't loud or dramatic. It unfolds quietly, inviting you to notice changes that have been taking shape beneath the surface for far longer than you may realize. The Star is often associated with healing that comes after disappointment has already done its work. It doesn't promise that life has always been easy, nor does it ask you to ignore what you've lost. Instead, it represents the kind of hope that returns with maturity. A steadier confidence built from experience rather than expectation. If there is a dream you've placed aside because the timing never seemed right, or because you questioned whether anyone else could understand it, this card gently suggests that its story may not be over. Like a seed resting beneath the soil through changing seasons, some aspirations need time to develop stronger roots before they are ready to grow again. Judgment follows with a different invitation. Despite its name, this card rarely speaks about criticism or punishment. More often, it marks a moment when you begin seeing your own history with greater compassion and perspective. It encourages you to recognize that earlier versions of yourself were doing the best they could with the understanding they had at the time. Those chapters were not mistakes to erase, but important parts of the path that brought you here. As your perspective expands, you may notice an inner calling becoming more difficult to ignore. Not because it is demanding attention, but because you will finally become ready to hear it. For Libra especially, this can be a meaningful realization. You naturally seek harmony, yet there are times when preserving peace has required setting aside parts of your own voice. Judgment gently asks whether you can continue creating balance while also making room for your authentic thoughts, ambitions, and values. Growth sometimes begins with a simple acknowledgement that the life you've outgrown no longer reflects the person you've become. Then comes the Ace of Swords, bringing the gift of clarity. This card often appears when confusion begins to give way to understanding, not through dramatic revelations, but through moments that seem almost ordinary. A conversation that lingers in your thoughts, a passage in a book, an unexpected message, or even a familiar memory viewed from a different perspective can suddenly reveal something that has been waiting just beyond your awareness. The truth arrives quietly, yet once you recognize it, it becomes difficult to see your life in quite the same way again. The Ace of Swords isn't simply about discovering the truth, it is about giving yourself permission to live by it. There is a meaningful difference between knowing something in your heart and allowing that understanding to shape your decisions. This card invites you to speak more honestly with yourself, trusting that clarity becomes stronger each time you choose authenticity over habit or fear. When the wisdom of these three cards is considered together, the story they tell is one of renewal. It is less about becoming someone entirely different and more about reconnecting with the qualities that have always belonged to you, but may have been set aside while meeting life's responsibilities or adapting to other people's expectations. What returns is not only a forgotten goal or a renewed opportunity, but also the confidence of the person who first believed that dream was worth pursuing. In practical ways, this season could bring an old idea back into focus with new possibilities attached to it. You may reconnect with someone whose presence now carries a different meaning, or discover that a path you once dismissed suddenly feels both realistic and deeply aligned with who you are today. Opportunities often look different when viewed through the eyes of someone who has grown, and what once felt overwhelming may now feel quietly achievable. There is no need to rush these developments. The deeper invitation is simply to remain attentive. Notice which conversations stay with you after they end, which places awaken unexpected emotions, and which thoughts continue returning with gentle persistence. Your body often recognizes meaningful change before your mind fully explains it. So give yourself permission to trust those subtle impressions without forcing immediate answers. Many of life's most lasting turning points begin almost unnoticed. They arrive like the first light spreading across a familiar landscape, revealing details that were always there, but hidden in the dark. As this period unfolds, allow yourself to listen carefully to those quiet moments of recognition. They are not trying to tell you who to become. They are gently reminding you of the person you have been growing into all along. Libra, as the energy surrounding July 12, 2026 begins to unfold, you may notice three quiet patterns emerging in ways that seem unrelated at first. Yet when viewed together, they reveal a deeper theme of realignment rather than coincidence. This isn't about predicting a single life-changing event. It's about recognizing how different pieces of your story may finally begin fitting together after months or even years of gradual change. The first pattern may arrive through reconnection. A familiar name could appear unexpectedly. A conversation might resume after a long silence, or someone from an earlier chapter of your life may return under very different circumstances. This doesn't necessarily mean every relationship is meant to continue exactly where it left off. Instead, it offers an opportunity to see how both people may have changed, bringing fresh understanding where there was once uncertainty. Sometimes closure comes through distance, and sometimes healing begins when two people meet again with greater wisdom than they had before. Your first instinct may be to protect the progress you worked so hard to make. That response is understandable, especially if previous experiences taught you to guard your heart. Yet this season encourages discernment instead of defensiveness. Rather than asking whether someone deserves immediate trust, consider whether the present moment deserves to be viewed through the lens of the past. Growth often changes not only the people around us, but also the way we respond to them. Closely connected to that experience is the return of something far more personal: a dream, an idea, or a direction that quietly slipped into the background while life demanded your attention elsewhere. Perhaps you convinced yourself it wasn't practical, or maybe you simply reached a point where other responsibilities had to come first. Now, however, what once seemed distant may begin to feel surprisingly attainable. The dream itself may not have changed very much, but you have, and that difference matters. Experience has a way of giving structure to inspiration. What once felt overwhelming can begin revealing practical next steps, and opportunities that seemed out of reach may now arrive with the support, timing, or perspective that was previously missing. You may even find yourself surrounded by people who recognize your strengths without asking you to become someone else first. The encouragement you receive feels different because it honors who you are rather than who others expect you to be. As your confidence grows, another subtle shift often follows. You may notice that your presence carries more weight even when you're speaking less. Libra has a natural gift for bringing people together, but there are seasons when that gift becomes most powerful because it is grounded in authenticity instead of approval. When your choices reflect your values more consistently, others tend to respond to the steadiness you project rather than the effort you expend trying to convince them. There is a quiet strength in no longer needing to prove your worth. Conversations become more meaningful because they arise from clarity rather than obligation. Decisions feel less complicated because they are guided by what genuinely aligns with your values instead of what simply keeps everyone comfortable. Ironically, this softer approach often creates greater momentum than constant striving ever could. Life occasionally opens unexpected paths in ways that are almost easy to overlook. An invitation arrives at the right moment, a conversation shifts your perspective, or an opportunity appears after you've stopped forcing outcomes. These moments rarely announce themselves with certainty. Instead, they ask only that you remain present enough to recognize them when they appear. This season isn't asking you to become perfect or to have every answer before moving forward. It simply encourages you to be honest with yourself about what no longer fits and what deserves another chance. Ask yourself which parts of your life have become quieter because they are complete, and which dreams have remained quietly alive beneath the surface, waiting for the right season to grow again. If uncertainty still lingers, allow yourself the space to pause instead of rushing toward conclusions. Stillness is not the same as standing still. Often it is the place where perspective settles, where emotions become easier to understand, and where the next step reveals itself naturally. If something meaningful returns during this period, whether it's a relationship, an opportunity, or a forgotten part of yourself, approach it with curiosity instead of fear. Perhaps what arrives now is not a reward for getting everything right, but a reflection of how much you've already grown. Real transformation rarely depends on force. More often it unfolds through steady choices, honest conversations, and the quiet confidence that comes from living in closer alignment with who you truly are. When that happens, life doesn't necessarily become louder. It simply begins to feel more coherent, as though your inner compass and your outer path have finally started pointing in the same direction. Libra, as this season of realignment continues around July 12, 2026, the greatest changes may not begin with a bold decision at all. More often, they begin with a quieter choice, the decision to pause before reacting, to listen before speaking, or to check in with your own heart before searching for answers everywhere else. These small moments of awareness can gradually reshape the direction of your life because they change the way you respond to every opportunity that follows. The symbolism surrounding this period reminds us that astrology is not simply about events unfolding overhead. It also reflects the inner landscape we bring to those events. Jupiter encourages a broader perspective, while Venus gently asks whether your choices truly reflect your values. Together, they suggest that your greatest compass right now is not certainty, but self-awareness. The more grounded you become within yourself, the easier it may be to recognize which opportunities genuinely belong on your path. Rather than chasing dramatic breakthroughs, allow this season to become an invitation to build quiet, consistent rituals. Begin each morning with a few uninterrupted minutes that belong entirely to you. Sit comfortably, breathe slowly, and let your attention settle inward before the demands of the day begin. As you inhale, imagine creating space for the person you are still becoming. As you exhale, picture releasing old expectations, unnecessary pressure, or roles that no longer reflect who you are today. You might gently remind yourself, I am becoming more open to clarity, balance, and the opportunities that truly align with me. You don't have to force yourself to believe every word immediately. Sometimes repeating a compassionate intention simply creates enough room for fear to soften and confidence to grow naturally over time. Your body deserves that same kindness. Gentle movement, an unhurried walk beneath the morning sky, light stretching, or a few moments of mindful breathing can help settle emotions that have quietly accumulated through busy weeks. We often carry stress without realizing it, storing tension in our shoulders, our posture, and even the way we breathe. Moving with patience instead of urgency can become a simple way of reminding yourself that growth doesn't always require constant effort. The choices you make throughout the day can reinforce that same sense of balance. Nourishing meals filled with fresh greens, seasonal herbs, colorful vegetables, healthy fats such as walnuts or flaxseed, and plenty of water can support both physical energy and mental clarity. These aren't magical formulas. They're gentle ways of caring for the foundation that supports every thought, conversation, and decision you make. Even the colors around you can serve as quiet reminders of the atmosphere you hope to create. Soft sage green reflects renewal and emotional balance. Dusty blue encourages calm reflection when life feels noisy. Warm ivory symbolizes clarity without rigidity, while touches of soft gold can remind you of the quiet value you already carry within yourself. These symbols don't change your future on their own, but they can help reinforce the mindset you're choosing to cultivate. The number 12 may also feel especially meaningful during this period. Beyond marking July 12, it naturally represents cycles coming together, 12 months completing a year, 12 zodiac signs forming a complete wheel. If that number begins catching your attention, let it simply remind you that growth often unfolds through steady progress rather than sudden leaps. It can be comforting to look for signs in the world around us, yet the most meaningful guidance often comes from the subtle changes happening within. Sometimes the true shift isn't discovering a new answer, but asking better questions. What deserves more of your energy now? What can finally be released? Which habits help you feel more like yourself instead of further away from who you want to become? If you've been carrying more than you've admitted, even quietly supporting everyone else while leaving little space for your own needs, consider letting this become the week you begin restoring that balance. Receiving isn't the opposite of giving. It is often what allows generosity to remain sustainable. Clarity, rest, and honest self-care are not distractions from your journey. They are part of it. You don't need to see every step before moving forward. The next meaningful choice is usually enough. Continue showing up for yourself with patience, curiosity, and kindness, trusting that understanding develops through lived experience rather than perfect certainty. Often the most important changes arrive so gently that we only recognize them after they've already begun reshaping the way we see ourselves. When life feels uncertain, it's natural to believe that transformation must arrive with dramatic answers. Yet many lasting changes begin much more quietly. They grow through one honest conversation, one healthier boundary, one moment of forgiveness, or one decision to trust yourself a little more than you did yesterday. Libra, your strength has never come from controlling every outcome. It comes from your ability to find balance even while life continues to evolve. That reminds me of a story I'd like to share with you, not as proof that every journey unfolds the same way, but as an illustration of what can happen when someone gradually lets go of constant control and becomes willing to meet life with greater openness and trust. I'd like to leave you with a story that reflects the spirit of this season. It isn't meant to predict exactly how your journey will unfold, but it illustrates how meaningful change often begins in ways we never expect. Sometimes the most important turning points arrive quietly, long before we recognize their significance. The woman in this story was also a Libra. For years, she had built a life that reflected everything she valued, a creative career she loved, a home filled with personal meaning, and relationships she believed would carry her into the future. Then, gradually, circumstances shifted. Economic uncertainty affected her work, difficult decisions followed, and one by one the foundations she had relied upon began to disappear. Along with those losses came something even harder to describe, the feeling that she no longer recognized the direction of her own life. Like many people who cared deeply about creating harmony, she responded by trying to solve everything at once. She worked harder, searched for more answers, filled every quiet moment with another plan, another application, another attempt to regain control. Yet the more she pushed, the further she felt from the peace she was hoping to recover. Eventually, she realized that constant effort alone could not provide the clarity she was searching for. Then, around the middle of July, something simple happened. One morning, she opened her email and found a message from someone she hadn't spoken to in years, a former professional rival she had always viewed as competition. The message wasn't dramatic. It simply asked whether she would consider working together on a new project, suggesting that they might accomplish more through collaboration than either could alone. Her first instinct was hesitation. Old assumptions resurfaced, along with familiar questions and doubts. But instead of reacting immediately, she paused. She realized that both she and the other person had changed since their last conversation, and she allowed herself to respond to who stood before her now rather than who they had once been. She agreed to meet, not because she knew exactly where it would lead, but because she was willing to remain open. That single decision became the beginning of something entirely different. Over the following months, they built a partnership that honored her creativity without demanding constant exhaustion. Her career regained stability, yet the greatest change wasn't financial. She began trusting her own judgment again. She reconnected with family in more meaningful ways, released old disappointments she had quietly carried for years, and eventually welcomed a relationship that felt peaceful rather than performative. For the first time in a long while, she no longer felt she had to earn the right to simply be herself. Looking back, she later wrote that the greatest shift happened long before her circumstances improved. It happened the moment she stopped believing she had to control every outcome before taking the next step. She realized that openness had accomplished what constant striving never could. Once she made room for possibility, new paths gradually became visible. Stories like hers rarely become headlines because they unfold through ordinary moments. A thoughtful conversation, an unexpected invitation, a message that arrives on an otherwise ordinary day. Whether someone describes those moments as intuition, divine timing, faith, or simply life's natural unfolding, they often share one thing in common. They become meaningful because someone is willing to notice them. If you find yourself navigating uncertainty right now, Libra, try not to rebuild your future using only yesterday's assumptions. Leave room for new perspectives to emerge. Sometimes what first appears to be an interruption is actually an invitation to move in a direction you hadn't previously considered. Healing doesn't always follow your original plan, yet it often leads somewhere more authentic. As you move through this season surrounding July 12, 2026, remember that the most important guidance may not come from searching endlessly for signs outside yourself. It may come from paying closer attention to the quiet voice you've been hearing all along. The dreams you've set aside, the values you've rediscovered, and the gentle pull toward greater authenticity may all be pointing in the same direction. Libra is often associated with balance, but true balance isn't achieved by pleasing everyone around you. It grows from learning to honor your own truth while remaining open-hearted toward others. Every thoughtful decision you make, every healthy boundary you establish, and every moment you choose clarity over fear becomes another small step toward a life that feels more genuinely your own. You don't have to know exactly where the path leads before taking the next step. What matters is your willingness to continue showing up with honesty, curiosity, and patience. Speak your hopes aloud again, even if your confidence is still growing. Welcome returning opportunities with discernment rather than old assumptions. Trust that the person you are today is different from the one who first faced those earlier crossroads. So let me leave you with a few questions to reflect on. Which part of your life is asking for greater honesty? Which dream deserves another look now that you've grown into someone new? And what would change if you trusted your own inner wisdom just a little more than you did yesterday? If this reflection speaks to you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment with 12 and share one area of your life where you're choosing greater clarity and balance during this season. Your story may encourage someone else who finds themselves standing at a similar crossroads. Thank you for spending this time here and allowing these reflections to become part of your journey. Whether you've been part of this community for years or you're joining today, your presence is genuinely appreciated. If these messages continue to bring you insight or encouragement, you're warmly invited to support the channel through the link in the description or by using the QR code on your screen. Every contribution helps us continue creating thoughtful astrology content that inspires reflection, healing, and meaningful conversation. This isn't the conclusion of your story, Libra. It's simply the beginning of another chapter one, shaped not by urgency or fear, but by greater self-awareness, steadier confidence, and the quiet courage to live in closer alignment with the person you've been becoming all along.